back, everybody. The upcoming consumption tax on sweetened beverages is sparking debate from public health to business impact and at all levels of society. Joining me now, Kathryn Silvera, President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, the JMEA. She's sharing what that could mean for the industry and for us as consumers. Good morning.
Good morning,
for being
Simone.
here.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Yes. So wholly for debate at all levels of society about this.
Yes.
What is the position of the JMEA?
Well, there are several things that can be true at once. We do know that Jamaica does have a health crisis, but we also know that manufacturers contribute about 8.9% to GDP. So when about 15 to 20% of our membership is made up of beverage manufacturers, an announcement such as this can cause some uncertainty.
Quite.
And we are still canvassing our members to see what the extent of this SCT is going to mean, not only to them, but to consumers in general.
Is there usually discussion with stakeholders such as yourselves before these taxes are levied?
I would say in the past,
along with the rest of us?
I would say in the past, yes, there has usually been collaboration and consultation. And so I think a lot of our manufacturers and ourselves at the JMEA are a little surprised that this time there wasn't any consultation. And so we do hope that, this is the beginning of the budget cycle. We do hope that starting now, we can have some level of consultation because there are still a lot more questions and answers. Does this mean that it's only on added sugar drinks, or is it on 100% natural juices or drinks that have sugar occurring naturally? We're not sure what is going to be covered under the SCT. And a number of years ago, maybe 8 years now, the health ministry came out with a decision that for schools, there was a certain percentage of sugar in drinks that was only going to be allowed. And many of our manufacturers spent a lot of money investing. Retrofitting the drinks. And actually, these drinks cost more because the inputs are higher than in the regular sugar drinks. And this SCT seems to be broad-based across the board. So even on the drinks that they've already retrofitted, this SCT seems to be applicable.
So you still have a lot of questions?
Definitely.
Okay, so I think we need to have audience with the JMEA so that the questions can be answered because no doubt the implications are, for people who don't understand, you're watching, you think, okay, these big corporations can afford it, but it really is like a process that cascades, starts there, and so break it down.
But it's not just
those
big corporations, Simone. 70% of the JMEA membership is made up of micro and small members.
Okay.
And so beverages are not just the Wisinco and Seprod. There are a lot of MSMEs, and they don't have the voice. Well, we're here to have the voice for them. But the reality is that they don't necessarily have the capital to be able to invest as such our larger manufacturers. And, it's something the Prime Minister, after Melissa, told us that we had to be 60% more productive. And now we have an SCT that is coming about. Our beverage manufacturers cannot just produce water. There's several beverages that they are going to be producing. And so it's just, I think, consultation needs to happen, and we need to understand fully what does this SCT mean and how best can we able to help. We realize what has happened. Melissa was a devastation. We understand that things can't necessarily be as normal and that the government does need to raise revenues, but we want to ensure that what they're implementing is actually going to raise them revenues and not just reduce consumption.
Tell us break it down to brass tacks. So the tax is levied. How does it affect the manufacturer?
Well, it is a 2 cents per milliliter charge. So, for example, for a 200 ml drink, or I think the example was a 300 ml drink, that's an additional $6. But it depends on where the input is put in the manufacturing costing, let's say. Because at $6, it could be then compounded by markup. If it is at that manufacturer, then use a distributor to get themselves to the wholesale or retail outlets. That's an hour further compounded markup. And then, of course, the supermarket or the wholesale also has their markup. So it seems like it could be more than the $6 on the 300 ml.
Yeah. And then that's passed down to
the consumers.
Right.
Now, we do understand that this is something that you have a choice. Consumers do have a choice. But again, still very many questions. We don't know if this is applying to flavored milks. We don't know the extent of the SET on the sweetened.
When is it supposed to take effect again?
It says the first quarter of 26-27, so that means no later than June 30th.
First quarter? The end of
first-
Q1 of 26 is March.
Well, no, the new financial year of the government.
Okay.
So their financial year starts April 1.
Okay.
So it's supposed to be any time between April 1 and June 30th.
So what is your hope between now and that time? That you will sit, and what will happen?
Well, I think our hope is that we'll have the consultation and to see how best we can fairly ascertain how we can assist government in collecting their revenue while still being fair, especially to our micro and small manufacturers of beverages.
Do you think there'll be a rollback, or do you think there'll be any adjustment?
I think that's hard to say at this time. I think that in the past, government and manufacturing have spoken well together. And so I think that that's all that we can best hope for, is that we'll have those consultations now and see how best we can work together.
And in the meantime, what are your stakeholders? How are you hunkering down? How are you planning?
Yes. Oh, definitely. Yes, we do have a call this morning with some of our beverage manufacturers to see how best we can advocate for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, if it does take effect, what do you think this means for that sector?
I think that manufacturing is always resilient. I think that we are going to make sure that we overcome whatever it is that is introduced to us. But I think also, we are the heart of the productive sector in Jamaica. And I think that the government needs to understand that consultation is what works best, especially when you have a sector that is utilizing Jamaica made, and we're exporting as well. So for us, it is not just the SET on the sugary beverages, but it's also the increase on the environmental levy. Because while the SET on sugary beverages may not apply to export, it shouldn't apply to exports. The environmental levy does. So the increase in the environmental levy could also affect and hurt exporters as well.
Mm-hmm. For the folks who are saying, this may not be a bad move, because if we're twinning with the health ministry's goals, this is not such a bad thing, you would say.
I would say that it's all applicable if it is that the money raised is used to help educate consumers. Because just putting a tax on sugar is not going to necessarily change consumers' habits. In one aspect, we hope that it doesn't change consumers' habits so that we can still be economically viable, and that we're, as manufacturers, we contribute to the GDP and to the revenues of the country. In another, if it is that the government is introducing this tax to help curb consumerism on sugar, then we have to educate consumers about what it is that they can, consume instead of these sugary beverages. Is the government then going to provide incentives to our manufacturers to produce healthier options? Mm-hmm. Because, we want our productive sector to produce more, to be more productive. We need to take on 60% since the country had Hurricane Melissa. So is the government going to use any of these revenues to incentivize our manufacturers to produce healthier items?
Lots of questions, but she did say more questions and answers at this point. We hope you are able to have audience with those you need to have audience with, and that something can be worked out that will benefit you, benefit us as consumers, benefit the government. Definitely. I don't know if there's something that can actually do all of those things, but we will see. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
For being here this morning. President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, Kathryn Silvera. Take a break on Smile. Up next, second edition of News in 5. Still to come, though, we're going to meet Kadino and Kayla Brown Walsh. We tell you their story. It's a heart-to-heart story of love. Still in the month of love. We have that after this break.